Continuing with another classic horror film, the story kicks off with a bizarre murder case. In a luxury apartment in Korea, a man named Don Min was burned to death. Strangely enough, the police investigation revealed that throughout the entire death process, Don Min showed no signs of struggling. At that moment, female lead So-yeon notices officers digging a hole in the yard. Turns out they found a dog's corpse at the crime scene. The team leader figures it's unrelated to the case, so he orders it buried right there. Afterward, So-yeon interviews the neighbors. One older lady tells her, Don Min moved in about a year ago. People often came looking for him, and whenever they met, they'd argue loudly, making life miserable for everyone around. 10 years ago, Don Min served time for negligent homicide. The neighbors were wary of him. No one dared complain about the noise. Also, Don Min seemed to have some mental issues. He regularly saw a psychiatrist. Meanwhile, partner Hun-ki spots something odd. After release, Don Min had no job or savings. How could he afford such a big place? To find a breakthrough in the case, the two head to the psychiatric clinic first. The doctor says Don Min was plagued by nightmares almost every night. In his dreams, a long-haired woman in a skirt tormented him. The person Don Min accidentally killed back then was a man, so it doesn't match the idea of a vengeful ghost. During treatment, the doctor also hypnotized him. In his sleep, Don Min drew a picture, showing a woman and a child. It strongly resembled a painting called Pregnant Woman and Death. Based on this, the doctor concluded Don Min felt guilty about his mother's death. That's why he had those dreams. But is that really the truth? Over dinner, So-yeon suddenly asks Hun-ki, "Why did you quit your court job to become a cop?" Hun-ki says he wants to use his own power to bring criminals to justice. Then he asks why some people go so insanely crazy. Hun-ki then turns the question back to So-yeon about why she became a cop.
찾고 싶은 사람이 있었어.
누구요? 첫사람?
첫사랑 찾으려고 형사 되는 인간도 있냐?
있어요, 그런 사람.
누구?
저요.
정신 차려. 죽이고 싶은 사람이 있었어.
This seemingly joking conversation actually reveals a lot of information. Maybe behind every glamorous life hides unknown pain. Cut to in a hotel, where a man named Jung-ho is having his wedding. His friend Jae-hyuk is in charge of taking photos, but the moment Jae-hyuk raises the camera, something eerie happens. A woman in black suddenly appears in the frame out of nowhere. Jae-hyuk looks up in shock. The woman vanishes again. At first, he thinks it's his eyes playing tricks, but when he checks the camera again, the woman reappears. Yet the other photographers don't seem to see her. While Jae-hyuk is stunned, he jolted and leaped up, terrified. Back home, Jae-hyuk stares at the wedding group photo, feeling something's off. Suddenly, a loud bang comes from outside the window. Jae-hyuk gets up to check. Even though nothing's out there, his uneasy heart makes him draw the curtains anyway. At that moment, another computer in the room receives an email. As soon as Jae-hyuk opens it, a creaking sound comes from behind the curtain. The window is closed, no wind outside at all, and Jae-hyuk lives on the 10th floor. So where's that sound coming from? With trembling hands, Jae-hyuk approaches the curtain. Wow! Outside stands a little cutie with blood tears streaming from her eyes. The next second, the camera behind him turns on by itself. The next day, police discovered Jae-hyuk's body. No abnormalities at the scene. The coroner preliminarily determines cause of death as sudden heart failure. But coincidentally, the victims of the two murders turned out to be friends. Then So-yeon and Hun-ki followed the clues from the photos and found their mutual friend. Ji-chul suddenly lost two close friends. Ji-chul was in really low spirits. Hun-ki kindly handed him a cigarette. According to Ji-chul's recollection, Dong-min accidentally killed someone 9 years ago. The three of them urged him to turn himself in. But ever since Dong-min got out of prison, he's become moody and unpredictable. And Jae-hyuk's health had always been good. They'd never heard of him having any heart problems. So-yeon and Hun-ki didn't get any valuable leads. They could only leave for now. But right after the two left, Ji-chul's face completely fell. Meanwhile, So-yeon and Hun-ki returned to the police station. The forensic expert told them that in his 20 years on the job, this was the first time he'd seen something so bizarre. Both died from asphyxiation. Dongmin was already dead before the fire started, and both had been exposed to hydrochloric acid gas before death. Normally, if a person inhales a certain amount of hydrochloric acid gas, it would cause cardiac paralysis. In other words, their real cause of death was poisoning. Both victims had severe strangulation marks on their necks. Could the victims have had an altercation with anyone prior to their death? But the crime scenes showed no signs of struggle at all. Even stranger, the victims' mouths and noses showed no foaming or inflammation. Usually when someone inhales toxic gas, their respiratory system would develop blisters. But they had none at all. So the coroner came to a conclusion.
외부에서 독가스를 흡입한 게 아니야.
그럼
몸속에서 발생한 거야.
What kind of deep grudge would drive the killer to use such a deranged method? Just as everyone was puzzled, another murder happened. That night, Ji-chul, who had been questioned by the police, stared out the window, weighed down by heavy thoughts. At that moment, his phone rang. It was a new email. As soon as Ji-chul opened it, the bathroom light suddenly turned on. He curiously walked over. The light suddenly went out again. Ji-chul turned his head and saw a ghostly figure in the mirror. But when he turned around, there was nothing there. Ji-chul thought it was a hallucination for mental exhaustion and decided to take a bath to relax. But while he was showering, the bathroom door inexplicably opened. It felt like a pair of eyes was watching him. Suddenly, a mass of women's hair appeared above Ji-chul's head. He looked up and saw long hair hanging straight down. He looked around in terror. A cute little figure suddenly appeared outside the curtain. The female ghost slowly approached him. Blood kept dripping into Ji-chul's mouth. And just like that, Ji-chul died too. He also died from cardiac paralysis, with the same strangulation marks on his neck. So-young decided to start with the email, to find a breakthrough in the case. In the video, a salt drying room appeared, along with a girl named Min-jung. But the last photo had a very eerie vibe. In the pitch-black salt drying room, there was a woman. The next day, So-young arrived at the small town where Min-jung lived. But the local officer told her that Min-jung had gone missing 9 years ago. The officer who handled the case back then had been promoted to chief. The chief recalled that Min-jung was a pitiful girl. Her family seemed cursed. Her mother ran off with someone. Her father went out to sea and never returned. She grew up depending on her grandmother. Sadly, after she went missing, her grandmother passed away from excessive grief. So-young asked the chief for the address and went to Min-jung's house. She happened to run into Min-jung's high school classmate. According to the classmate's memory, Min-jung was a cheerful, pretty girl. In high school, she dated a boy named Junho. Junho took great care of Min-jung. They were a perfect match. But life is unpredictable. One day, Junho got into an argument with some tourists from Seoul. It ended with him accidentally getting killed. And the person who unintentionally killed him was Dongmin. Not long after that, Min-jung simply vanished. The townspeople all thought she had committed suicide. But Min-jung was a very devout Catholic, so her classmates refused to believe she would do such a thing. So-young believed Min-jung would definitely go confess to the priest. So she went to the church, but the priest refused to break his vow of confidentiality. He only said that when Min-jung was at her most helpless, he painted that picture for her. After leaving the church, So-young ran into 3 female students. When the girls heard So-young asking about the salt-drying house, their faces immediately changed. They urgently warned her never to go there, because that place is haunted. Not long ago, a girl passed by there at night and saw a ghost. After that, she went insane. But So-young still didn't believe in superstitions. She went straight to the salt-drying house to investigate. Looking around, she didn't notice anything unusual. At this point, of the 4 people in the photo, only Junho was still alive. So-young and Hyun-ki quickly went to question him. But when faced with So-young's questions, Junho played dumb and claimed he knew nothing. Who am I? Where am I? What am I supposed to do? With no useful information, the two reviewed the case again inside the car. So-young was convinced they had missed some crucial detail. Then she suddenly remembered the dog that was buried in the first crime scene. The killer burned Dongmin's body, but didn't throw the dog into the fire. Most likely, the dog was meant to convey some kind of message. Sure enough, inside the dog's stomach, they found a roll of videotape without its casing. Back at the police station, the two played the tape. Although the footage was a bit blurry, they could still clearly make out what was happening. Several men were assaulting a girl, and the girl being abused was Minjun, who disappeared 9 years ago. Seeing those images, So-young felt deeply pained inside. Because she had gone through something similar back in high school. The abuser had a knife scar on his hand. All these years, she had been searching for that scum, and that was the real reason she became a police officer. Meanwhile, strange things kept happening to Young-ho, the last survivor in the photo. Whether he was riding an elevator or at a car wash, a woman in white always seemed to follow him like a shadow. One night, while staring blankly at the photo, a sudden email window popped up on his computer. Jung-ho clicked it open without thinking. Eerie music instantly played from it. This was the death curse email. Jung-ho panicked immediately. He tried to close the web page, but the computer froze right then. In desperation, he unplugged the monitor. At that moment, a pair of deathly pale feet appeared under the desk. Then 2 hands climbed onto the table. Finally, a face covered in blood emerged. Luckily, his wife showed up just in time and pulled him out of the hallucination. To escape these terrifying visions, the very next morning, he used the excuse of a trip and took his wife to a countryside guest house. But when you've done something unforgivable, no matter where you run, you can't escape the boomerang effect. On the other side, So-young and Hyun-ki immediately applied for a search warrant. After knocking with no answer, Hyun-ki forced the door open. That's when they realized Jung-ho had gone to a guest house. The two hurriedly set off to find him. Unfortunately, there were too many guest houses in the area. They had no choice but to check them one by one. Time quickly turned to night. While sleeping, Jung-ho suddenly felt something heavy on his body, as if something was pressing down on him. And there really was. Suddenly, the girl gripped his neck tightly. Jung-ho struggled for a long time, and finally broke free, thinking it was over. But when he turned his head, the woman was lying right beside his pillow. Jung-ho let out a terrified scream. His wife was also woken up by the noise. Everything around them returned to normal again. But was it really that simple?
오빠. 근데 오빠 뒤에
Jung-ho was completely terrified out of his wits. He rushed downstairs to grab a kitchen knife for self-defense, ready to have a showdown with the woman. Suddenly, the lights around him started flickering non-stop. The woman's figure appeared and disappeared. Jung-ho was at a loss. He could only swing the knife wildly at the air. Suddenly, all the lights shattered. The room plunged into darkness. Through the faint moonlight, Jung-ho realized his entire body was already covered in blood. He collapsed to the floor in fright. And in the pool of blood, a woman slowly emerged. Suddenly, So-young and Hyun-ki burst through the door. They saw Jung-ho sitting on the floor covered in blood, and his wife had already been stabbed multiple times. She was dead beyond dead. Jung-ho was immediately taken to the police station. This time, he finally revealed the truth from 10 years ago. It turned out that the one who beat Minjun's boyfriend to death was actually all 4 of them. Dongmin, Jae-yuk, Ji-chul, and Jung-ho. But Dongmin knew the other 3 were all rich, second-generation kids, so he volunteered to take all the blame himself, on the condition that the 3 families give him a huge sum of money. But greed knows no bounds. After getting out of prison, Dongmin tried to blackmail the 3 with a videotape, but before he could carry it out, he was killed. The police suspected Jung-ho was afraid the truth would come out, so he killed the other 3 one after another. But Jung-ho insisted it was a vengeful ghost coming for them, and that he was the next one to die. So-young questioned him about Minjun's whereabouts. He just shook his head in confusion. The police didn't want to hear any more of his nonsense, so they stepped out to discuss the case. Before that, he had asked Hyun-ki for a cigarette, but as soon as he finished smoking it, another email popped up on the computer. Without Jung-ho clicking, the email opened automatically, accompanied by that familiar eerie melody. The woman came for him again, but this time, buy one get one free. She even brought a child ghost along. Screams came from the interrogation room. By the time the officers rushed in, he was clutching his own throat tightly. To everyone else, it looked like suicide. But in Jung-ho's mind, he was fighting back. Everyone tried to pull his arms away, but he struggled desperately. In the end, he strangled himself to death. At that moment, a photo of the salt drying room appeared on the computer. That night, So-young had a dream. In the dream, she arrived at the salt drying room. There was a little girl, but she only had 4.5 candies. Why only half? 4 is too few, 5 is too many. After saying that, the little girl walked into the salt drying room. Minjun was waiting for her inside. Suddenly So-young woke up. Her intuition told her that this dream was trying to tell her something. So the next day, she studied that videotape again. When she played it once more, she was completely stunned. There were 4 people committing the crime in the video. So who was filming it? That means there was a 5th person at the scene. At the same time, So-young received a call from the coroner. He found hydrocyanic acid components on the cigarette filters the victims had smoked. Wait, hydrocyanic acid?
그 반대로 필터에서 입으로 들어간 거더라고. 과립형 청산칼륨이야. 이걸 맥주나 탄산음료랑 마시니까 뱃속으로 들어가서 천천히 반응해가지고 청산가스가 발생한 것 같아. 그게 기도를 타고 폐로 역류해서 들어간 거지.
So-young suddenly realized everything. Hyun-ki had mentioned staying in the salt village before, and all the victims had smoked the cigarettes Hyun-ki gave them. Hyun-ki also said he became a cop to find his first love. So Hyun-ki was the real killer. He was the 5th person at the crime scene. 5th personality activated. Hyun-ki used to be Minjun's junior in school. As a photography enthusiast, he loved taking pictures of Minjun the most. He believed that 4.5 steps away captured the most beautiful shots of people, and Minjun was his one and only. Unfortunately, his subtle confession wasn't taken seriously by Minjun, because Minjun already had someone in her heart. Hyun-ki's love was one-sided. On Minjun's graduation day, Hyun-ki prepared flowers to confess his love openly, but he witnessed Minjun and her boyfriend getting intimate in the salt house. That scene devastated Hyun-ki. He tearfully burned everything related to Minjun. A few days later, Dong-min gave Hyun-ki a camera, asking him to help film something. Only at night did he realize it was to record the entire process of Minjun being assaulted. Most people would immediately stop it in such a situation, especially since she was his secretly loved goddess. But Hyun-ki instantly recalled that intimate scene. Jealousy blinded him. He turned on the camera. At that moment, Junho rushed in and fought with the 4 men. Terrified, Hyun-ki quickly ran to call the police. But by the time the police arrived, it was already too late. Junho had been beaten to death. Minjun also thought about suicide, but she discovered she was already pregnant. The station chief soon found out about this, because he had taken bribes from the 3 families, promising them there would be no more trouble afterward. Then came up with a permanent solution, using the excuse that the 3 families wanted to repent to Minjun. He lured her to the salt house, then buried her alive under a pile of salt. At this point, Hyun-ki drags the station chief to the salt house, ordering him to dig up Minjun's body, or he'll shoot him dead. Soon, So-young also arrives, ordering Hyun-ki to put down the gun. Don't make the same mistake again. But finding Minjun is Hyun-ki's only obsession. No one can make him stop. Finally, Minjun's body is uncovered. The moment he sees Minjun, Hyun-ki has no desire to live anymore. He begs So-young to shoot him dead, so he can go find Minjun and atone for his crimes. To provoke So-young, he deliberately cuts his hand. This is So-young's psychological trauma. Yet after a long standoff, So-young puts down the gun.
아니, 안 쏠 거야. 죽이지 않을 거야. 지켜볼 거야. 그냥 그렇게 죽으면 용서가 될 것 같아? 살게 할 거야. 그래서 자기 새끼가 똑같은 꼴 당하는 것도 보게 하고, 늙고 병들어 추하게 죽을 때 그때 옆에 가서 귀에다 대고 말해줄 거야. 네 평생 살아온 인생 발정난 개만도 못한 인생이었다고.
So-young's thunderous words condemn not just Hyun-ki, but all demons like him who disregard others' lives. Perhaps the law can't judge them yet, but conscience will gnaw at them for the rest of their lives, keeping them sleepless, restless. In the end, Hyun-ki atones with death. By the time the coroner arrives, they find an infant's body next to Minjun. The coroner tells So-young After death, the body decomposes. Gases expand inside, pushing the baby out. He is the one from the film's opening, the child ghost crying by the roadside. Looking about 8 or 9 years old. That's also why the film is titled, A Pregnant Mother Dies with Hatred. One corpse, two lives, both become vengeful spirits. That night, So-yeon dreams of Min-jung. This time, Min-jung is no longer in ghost form. She wears a white dress, with a smile on her face. The scene is very warm. The two seem to have become friends. So-young sleeps especially peacefully that day. Soon the police station calls her, telling her a strange phenomenon. The previous email content has disappeared. Perhaps all that information was deliberately shown to So-yeon by Min-jung to help her uncover the truth, probably due to shared tragic experiences. Min-jung believed So-yeon wouldn't let her down. In return, Min-jung also helped So-yeon find the man she's been searching for all along. At this time, he has a happy family, a successful career. Suddenly, he receives an email, and the scene shows the salt house from back then. Min-jung walks straight out of the email, and the story ends here.